Hey guys, another beautiful day on the water. I'm actually on the land, but I'm at the water. That's better than being on a boat. I don't have to worry about breaking down or maintenance or the noise but anyway, had a lot of great times on boats, but I'm riding my bike today. There it is. And I'll let you look at something else so I don't have to hold my phone and you don't have to keep staring at me. But I was thinking about maybe an update on where I am so far on my journey, and a little bit of background first. I feel like what did I come to the table with this year when I started on this quest to really find myself on a deeper level, for lack of a better way to explain it. But anyhow, I always believed, not always believed, but it's been 30 years probably anyway that I started to play with the idea of there's no victims and everything's perfect. Whatever happens to me, whatever suffering I've endured, whatever things didn't go my way, that really they were perfect, and that there's no accidents. I mean, there's things that can happen or not happen in your life, but there's no mistakes happening that all of a sudden here I am in the wrong spot with the wrong people at the wrong time doing the wrong thing. I don't believe that at all. So it gives me a little sense of on a deep level, I have a lot of peace with what's going on around me. But at the same time, I have struggles. I'm definitely not in tune with my higher self at all times by any stretch. But when I was, raising the kids and working all the time, I was very busy. But I did have those couple things of seeing that there's perfection in everything on some level. And I also realized that whenever I was happy and content and felt like things were going the right way, then everything did go in more harmony. My staff was happier, I was happier, my wife was happier, my kids were happier. And as soon as I got in a funk and felt like everything was going wrong, I kind of pushed everybody away. Very subtly. I see it a lot worse than other people, so I'm not beating myself up, but at the same time, there's a little bit of that, and I saw it. And I saw how my attitude about a situation really affected my team that I was working with every day. So I learned to try to control that, but I realized long ago, that you can't control it by just stomping on it. You just have to be okay with it and be like, okay, well, that slipped up a little bit. I reacted a little bit there. I probably shouldn't have, but I'm going to go back to my grounded self and treat my staff and my customers and my equipment and these cars with a little bit of respect, and seek the perfection in what's going on and the challenges I'm facing. So that was always going in the back of my mind, which I think has been very helpful. But then I came to a point where I realized I've always knew that I could go deeper in that scenario and more connected and more grounded and seeking more perfection in the world around me and more content and more at peace and more happiness in my personal life. So I thought, if I don't pursue it now, when am I ever going to pursue it? So that's what I'm working on this year, 2019. And so far, it's been really good. I think just what I expected. I feel a lot more content. I don't worry about money. I don't worry about things. I don't worry about impressing people. I always push those away as things in my mind, I shouldn't be concerned with. But now I own it a lot more. I feel it. Anyway, life's been there to keep challenging me, though, and keep teaching. But what have I kind of grasped from it so far? One thing is, the more you let go and think you don't need things and and you're comfortable in your own skin and you know who you are and you love yourself and all that good stuff, bringing yourself more peace and happiness, the deeper you go on that, the more stuff bubbles to the surface. I don't know if it's because you're not spending a lot of your mental bandwidth thinking about things that aren't important, like stressful things and money and objects and your relationships. When you don't have to worry about them anymore, maybe you have more time to let, and more mental bandwidth, more personal energy, however you want to describe it, in order for you to look deeper into those things that are in your past that you think you've come to grips with, but really you haven't totally, because they're still coming up and they're still there. So I've had a bunch of those come up, and a lot of my fears, stresses about money and things that I say on the surface, oh, I'm not going to worry about that anymore, but it's pretty deeply rooted in my growing up. I don't think I'm ever going to get away from that. But it's much better than it's ever been, and I think by being more present, I'm more in the moment, I'm more connected, and that's been really nice. That's a double-edged sword too. I find myself, it's much easier to get connected and grounded and in my space, and again, there's a million words to describe these things, but no words that really give it total justice. So I feel like I have to give 4 words to describe, the analogy of sitting down and seeing the perfection in everything around me. So the more I've seen the perfection in everything around me, the more stressful things have got. There's like, when you're busy, you don't have to think about something as much. But when you're not busy, it's like, man, I can really let that fester. And so I've had to have a new level of commitment to staying grounded and seeing the perfection, which is good. That's what I'm after. So life keeps giving me another challenge to say, hey, can you still sit down with this in your head? Yeah, I can. And it's like, okay, now I can let that go out of my head because I've come to grips with it. I've accepted it. I see its perfection. And then you're on to the next one, and you just keep chiseling down that totem. I don't know what term I'm looking for. There's some analogy there, cliche I could throw out. But anyway, what else was there? Some of the good things that have come up with my mission for the summer. Well, actually, one of the challenges, another challenge. I heard somebody put it this way, I thought was a nice analogy, that if you're a believer, you need to latch on to something like, this is what I know, this is what's fact, and I'm going to back up that belief that I know something by having a whole bunch of people also proclaim that they know something. So we're all going to become believers in this fact. And they want to profess that fact. And one thing I've learned for sure is that I don't know anything, and neither does anybody else, but there's a journey that you can't really talk about in words. You have to use parables like Jesus did. And you read a parable 20 times, throughout your life, every 5 years or something, and it'll mean something totally different. So that's the beauty of the parables. But I've definitely found new meaning to a lot of things that I thought I understood years ago. And to that point, I guess, what was I trying to get back to? That, the more I sit with, so as I get more comfortable and more conscious of the environment around me and more grounded and more present, then I find a lot of disconnect between people because there's very few people who are present. And there's a sadness to that. And it's like, oh, why don't I just go back to being busy and making jokes with everybody else? And it's not that I'm not happy or I don't laugh or things aren't fun, but it's just, I want to share things with people that I really can't. And here I am talking to myself in this video, pretending that there's an audience out there. Because these things are difficult to talk about, and you can't really have this conversation with someone because they're gonna steer this conversation in their own direction of their own experience of where they are, because they're not really trying to figure out where I'm going or where I am, because that would mean they'd have to let go of their belief and accept something else possibly, or some other wording even if it's not a different belief, but it's like, oh, but you're explaining God in a different way, what's collective consciousness, that's spooky stuff, that's weirdo hippie stuff that I don't like. And so if you're attached to beliefs, then you're going to cut off things that are not backing your belief, because you want to keep life simple. And I want to go to sleep. I don't want to be present. I don't want to be aware. I just want to go to sleep and wait for this life to be over, because bad things come and I'm just resting right now, waiting for the next bad thing to come, trying to figure out what that bad thing is. and I'm suffering in the meantime all the things that were bad in the past. So it's the gift that we as humans have, a memory that's very vivid and an imagination that's very powerful. So we can remember all our past things and suffer them again, and we can imagine all the bad things that are coming in the future and stress them before they get here. So I see why people are in misery, but I'm trying to let that stuff go and trying to encourage other people to pursue their own path. And I think that's a good place to end all this. I think that's a topic you could talk about for 15 hours, but I wanted to give you some idea where I was. So I'm going to try to make individual videos on individual points related to that conversation of pursuing my spiritual bliss and seeing what kind of creative power I can conjure up to be helpful in the world. And I'll let you know as I discover what the heck that's going to be. Anyway, love you guys. See ya. Out.